Blocks project, Legion Drive project, Hot Springs Boulevard, and Plaza project. Plaza project will recommence paving next Monday, which will get us a little bit closer to the end of that. There's obviously a punch list that will be needing to be done, a walk and punch list with the contractor. Legion Drive is in the engineering phases right now. Topography's already been done and surveying's been done, so the engineering portion is in the process as we speak. We're hoping to get that in about 5 to 6 months so we can put together RFP and go out for contracting services. Great Blocks, as we all know, is in the Lincoln Railroad District. That it was broke ground a week and a half ago. They've already installed, demoed the north sidewalk and installed the curb and gutter on the north end as well. Romero and Salazar, they have paved one of them, which is the Romero area, and they are now beginning Salazar where they're doing curb and gutter in those areas. Some other projects around the city, we have playground equipment installation. As Councilman Ulibarri has explained, that our contractor has begun installation at El Criston Park, and they will move on to Lincoln and South Pacific for playground equipment. They did begin that yesterday. Hanna Park solar lighting is in. It has. We have received it, and they'll start that installation next week. AOS is the architect firm that did an analysis or an assessment on the old City Hall building. We do have capital appropriation monies that we are waiting to see what we do with those. I have a meeting set up with them so we can go through their assessment. We can move forward with the demolition of the building in the back and the renovation of the roof according to their assessment. Moving on to the topic that was brought up about Lincoln Park gazebo. There was an assessment done, and construction drawings were given to us by Drawn and Design LLC. I have a meeting scheduled with them. We did get an appropriation this year from the legislature of $60,000 that we want to see where we go with that project, so we can get that up and running and have it back to a resource for the city, or an asset for the city of Las Vegas, and not behind a fence. Again, something that's very important that's going on currently is the forest fire, Herman's Peak forest fire. I did want to give a quick update. As of this afternoon, we're at 6,276 acres, only 10% containment. It has moved into the closer to the valley of Las Tuces. There's an image there on the bottom left. It's kind of hard to make out. I will send a copy of this spreadsheet of where it's at. The portion of this presentation that I would like to have Ms. Maria Gilberry join me is the water management plan that we would enact once we get into our monsoon seasons and we have silting from the burn scar flowing into our watershed or into our river. If you look at the map on the right, the blue line is our watershed. In between the two blue lines is our watershed. Basically, all those mountain ranges flow in arroyos down to the river. So the portion of the red, I don't know if I can kind of show you that. The portion that's just below the blue line there is the only portion that would impact our watershed. So with that, Ms. Maria.
Mayor, councilors, so this is addressed in our emergency response plan. So we already did have an emergency response plan for a wildfire in this case. When the ash does enter Beaver Creek, we'll be monitoring, and we're already monitoring the water, but we'll continue to monitor the water. When the water quality, and we are expecting it to eventually have ash in the water, when it reaches the point where we cannot treat it, then the water will be our reservoirs will be bypassed, so the water will continue downriver. And so we can close off Bradner, we can close off Peterson, and we have an intent to work with Story as well to ensure that all of the city's water in our reservoirs is protected. At that point, we'll continue to maintain water quality testing and sampling until the water is able to be treated, and then we reintroduce it into our reservoirs and into our treatment plant. In addition, we're already working with the Environment Department. We've been contacted by the State Engineer's Office, and our Water Master is keeping in touch with us, and Environment Department is keeping in touch with us to see if there's anything we need, and they'll be working with us if there is anything that we can use to continue to keep the water safe for our community. So the recommendation is always to try and conserve water and use it wisely, as well as as the mayor said, we need to assist with putting the fire out. That'll be the biggest benefit, is when this fire is out and we have the least amount of impact to our watershed.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Brown?
Maria, just for clarification, I know there's an individual spreading some untruths, but for the record, the city of Las Vegas is not increasing water rates because of this fire, right?
That is correct.
I just want to, I knew what it
The
was.
city of Las Vegas
It's
is not
important.
increasing water rates because of this. Yes, that's correct.
Question, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Montoya?
Okay, so on this monitoring of the water, is that being done at the diversion park or up at the Porvenir?
It's being done, right now we're not going up into the area of the fire. So we are monitoring it from above the diversion, anywhere my staff can get to. Right now, there is no impact. Ash-wise, our pH is being consistent, and the alkalinity is also consistent with good water. So we'll continue to monitor it in the area before it gets to our diversion, so we have time to make that adjustment.
So more than likely, we'll be getting some kind of contamination.
I'm going to plan for it, planning for the worst, hoping for the best. So we are planning for it to enter the Guyanus River via the Beaver Creek. That's the creek that's closest to where the fire is at, so we do expect it to most likely enter Beaver Creek once the monsoon starts. So this is not something that we're expecting soon. It'll be once we get those heavy rains that start washing the ash out of the mountain.
Yeah, well, the runoff will probably come before then.
The runoff will be coming, a lot of our runoff is more likely going to be coming from Wesner Springs, which will go straight down into the Guyanus. So, again, we're watching it now. We are watching the water quality now.
Okay, so for reimbursement purposes, I guess we'll keep a quantity that we have to divert of what's coming down. what's
We're
being
keeping our
diverted out.
reservoirs full. We're doing everything we can to keep our reservoirs full so that we have the storage for when we do need to come off the river.
And you do have an MOU with fire service for the water being taken from,
Out of Bradner, yes.
as of today?
We have that, which we did last Friday. We had the agreement with them as of last Friday. I know the mayor kind of asked for a little bit more information on that. I'm going to go ahead and answer that. They've taken 86 loads at 400 gallons per load, so that's 34,000 gallons. That's less than 1% of what we would have taken off in the river in the 2 days that they were using the Bradner's water. Currently, with the winds, they're not taking any water out of our reservoirs. So we did also make effluent available, which is water that would have ended up in the river, discharged going downstream. So that's of no impact to the community. So we're still trying to help out in any way we can.
How would they transfer that influent water?
They have tankers. They have
Tankers?
effluent tankers.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me ask, the last thing is, we're gonna be, with what the quantities that we have in storage now that you gave us, we should be fine in not having to go through other restrictions.
Correct.
Water restrictions by the end of summer.
We are doing, basically we have 70 million gallons, which is about a month and a half additional water in storage today than we had last year at the exact same time. So we are much better off today at this time of year than we were last year at the exact same time. So I'm not expecting us to have to go to stage 5, but I can't, until we see what happens with the monsoons and the ash runoff. We're currently in stage 3, and I would be prepared we might have to go to stage 4.
And lastly, I would just let the citizens know that, because I've been getting calls about why are they using our water and so forth. And I told them, you know what, this is an emergency. This depends on people's lives. And we're going to do and help however way we can. And if we run short down the road or whatever, well, then we'll deal with that too. But right now, it's important that we save our mountains and our livelihood and the people that live in that area. So, not because it's not in the city, it doesn't mean that we can't help out. So, just so that people understand, is we got to do whatever we can to help out, because water is limited, and we need to turn that fire off. Whatever resources are needed, we need to help out.
And the amount of water that we are currently allowing the firefighters to use to put this fire out is a drop in the bucket compared to what could be impacted
Yeah.
if the rivers end up having a lot of ash in them.
Well,
so.
I think we really lucked out that the winds were heading northwest to begin with, because if they would have gone west towards the watershed, then we would have been really big trouble. But
But
thank you,
this does
Mr.
benefit our community by helping put that fire out.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to clarify one thing, if I might. There is, the firefighters are using treated water for showers and drinking. So that's the one area where I'm making sure that they're getting treated water for.
Okay.
There's also an MOU signed by our recreation center for housing firefighters at the recreation center and gym, so that they can sleep during the daytime and night times on different shifts.
And Mr. City Manager, if the sheriff's department needs assistance with our police department, I would consider you saying yes at no cost.
We're
We've
in
already
constant
talked about
communication.
that today.
yes.
Yeah, Chris reached out to us and asked us for resources, and we said it would be fine for the police department to help in any way.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Council? Mayor?
No, thank you. Appreciate your hard work. Thank you, Mr. Maestas.
Yes, sir.
Next order of business, please.
Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Casey?
I move approval of the minutes for March 9th and March 16th, 2022. I did send in just one itty bitty tiny error that I found. I got my usual laugh for that because people have been warned about me being nitpicking about
The English
stuff like that.
teacher.
What can I say? So I move approval of the agenda as amended with that little tiny typo.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Ms. Casey. Second, please.
Second, Mr. Ryan.
Second by Mr. Uliwari. Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero,
Yes.
Counselor Montoya,
Yes.
Counselor Casey,
Yes.
Counselor Yulaburi Jr.
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey and a second by Counselor Yulaburi Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you, Danielle.
Next item is the consent agenda.
What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, do you want just one motion for everything?
Sure.
or- Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move that all items on the consent agenda, and I don't know if you want me to read each item or not, be approved.
There's a motion on the floor. Second, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Counselor Montoya,
Yes.
Counselor Yulaburi Jr.,
Yes.
Counselor Casey,
Yes.
Counselor Romero.
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey and a second by Counselor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is business item 1. It's request approval of resolution 22-17, acceptance and approval of the fiscal year 2021 audit financial report.
Welcome, Mr. Vaquero.
Mayor, council, I have no idea where our auditors are at. They were supposed to be here. I request we postpone this one for the rest of this meeting. If they show up, we'll put them on the agenda. If not, we'll move it till next week.
Move to table, Mr. Mayor.
Motion on the floor to tables by Mr. Montoya, second by Ms.
Table
Casey. To table till next week.
No, or till they show up.
If they show up later on today, we'll adjust them.
Okay. If they're here today, if not, next week will be the
That'll work.
table time.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero,
Yes.
Counselor Yulaburi Jr.,
Yes.
Counselor Casey,
Yes.
Counselor Montoya.
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Montoya and a second by Counselor Casey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is conduct a public hearing and adoption of ordinance number 22-02, an ordinance to amend the code of the city of Las Vegas by adding a new section 4 to chapter 22 to be entitled Expenditure Accounting Report. We have our city attorney.
Welcome, Scott.
Do I sign?
We have to go into,
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to enter public hearing.
There's a motion to enter into a public hearing. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Ms. Casey. Roll call, please.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Yulabrew Jr.?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero and a second by Counselor Casey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
If there's anyone in the audience who is going to speak on this issue, please stand. Raise your right hand. Say, repeat after me. I
I,
state your name.
Scott Aaron,
Swear to tell the truth
swear to tell the truth
during my testimony
during my testimony
to council tonight.
to council tonight.
Thank you.
All right, I was trying to pull this up here. We've got a long list. I was trying to get to the actual meat of it, but the short of it is, this is the same ordinance that came before the council, I believe it was last month. We made some changes. They were significant enough. It wasn't major changes, but they were significant enough that I thought it warranted going out for publication again for public comment purposes. We didn't get any public comment on it, so the substance and the meat of the ordinance is still the same. So happy to try to answer any questions you may have regarding that.
If you could just give a brief explanation as to the expenditure accounting report.
Sure. So the purpose of the expenditure accounting report is to have some accountability in place with the entities that do business with the city. The initiative for the ordinance came at the behest of Councilman Romero, and one of the things that we did after we got the meat of this ordinance together was to sit down with some of the organizations that currently do business with the city. They had some concerns about it. So we addressed some of those, and those were the changes that we made. But basically, in a nutshell, is bringing some accountability in terms of transparency to some of the organizations to all of the organizations that do business with the city.
Thank you. Mr.
And if
Romero?
I could add to that is, basically some of the changes from the original to this one. The original one had kind of an indefinite if they didn't comply with some of the requests. There was an indefinite. So what they, basically the new language says is just 2 years until they can provide the city as a certain, that they can provide certification or a legal document of the deficiencies. In other words, if they didn't comply with certain things, but let's say they changed board members, or let's say their chief executive officer was doing some, bad things, then, they can within 2 years reapply for some funding. So that was one of the things. I know the other thing was, there was some concerns pertaining to one of the items where they were very interested that board members could benefit from some of the funding. And they gave some scenarios to where it was understandable, so some of that language changed here to basically said where it gives the city manager the authority to say, okay, that's justifiable. So there has to be some type of justification. Other than that, it was John Goodwin, Susie Saidi that I met with, and John Goodwin, as we all know, is a treasure to many of these organizations that we deal with. So with those, listening to them and taking their concerns into account, we made those changes, and that's why. So we did work with the concerns. I mean, it wasn't 100% that they wanted, but they were happy, we were happy. So.
Good. Thank you for doing that, Mr. Romero. Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion to go into regular session.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to return to regular session.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero. Second, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Liwari. Roll call.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Yulabrew Jr.?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero and a second by Counselor Yulabrew Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Aaron.
Mr. Mayor?
What's the motion? What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, before I make a motion, I just want to make a comment. If we go into this EAR, and I know we're kind of skipping the audit report, but if you look at our findings, most of our findings were addressed within this EAR. So with that, we're not only doing this for the future, but we're also addressing some of our deficiencies on our audit. So kill two birds with one stone within this. With that, Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to approve resolution 22-17. I mean,
22-02.
ordinance 22-02.
There's a motion on the floor. Second, please.
Mr. Mayor?
Second by Ms. Casey. Roll call, please.
Counselor Yellowbury Jr.,
Yes.
Counselor Merrill,
Yes.
Counselor Montoya,
Yes.
Counselor Casey.
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero and a second by Counselor Casey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is business item 3, request approval of 2 professional services agreements, one between the City of Las Vegas and Holcomb Law Office and the other between the City of Las Vegas and New Mexico Local Government Law, LLC.
Welcome, Darlene.
Mayor and council, thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for being
I
here.
just want to say congratulations again to all council on your victories.
Thank you.
So tonight I have for your consideration, we solicited 5 quotes for legal professional services, specializing in human resource law and labor relations. I bring 2 written bids that we received for your consideration, and the reason we're recommending both of them is because they both have the city's background. So it's Dina Holcomb, Holcomb Law, and also New Mexico Government Law, and that is Randy Van Vleck. He was our general counsel for the fund for several years. New Mexico Government Local Law was the low bidder, but considering that, you know, they both have the background and we could use them both.
Very well. What's the pleasure of the council?
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Discussion? Go ahead, Mr.
So,
Montoya.
let me ask, so do we utilize the municipal league at all before we go to these attorneys,
We do,
to these firms?
we do.
And what have we used, how much funding have we provided in the last year to whomever we have right now?
Right now, we had Holcomb Law on contract. Her contract expired now in March. We've always kept it under 60,000, so we're averaging about 45,000
Okay.
in a fiscal year. Right now, with these 2 contracts, each one shall not exceed $20,000 each. And we have budgeted for that already for the upcoming fiscal year. Also, I kind of took Scott's budget for his attorney's fees because human resource is the majority of the legal fees that we use outside.
Is Ms. Olson? Do we use her for other areas, for other departments, for other issues?
Holcomb?
Yeah, okay.
We have, but mainly her focus is labor relations and human resource law.
But we don't have another contract with her? for
No,
others?
no, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So, Ms. Arguello, is Mr. Van Vleck going to be doing specific work on municipal law, or what will his focus be?
So, well, Mr. Van Vleck has retired from the municipal league.
Yeah.
If we need him for any human resource law or specialized labor relations issues or anything like that, we can go back and forth between them. And
So it's just HR?
it's just HR.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
so solely for HR.
Mhm.
Okay. I wasn't aware that Mr. Van Vleck
I know.
knew HR stuff. He did Counselor Olivares and I training when we first were elected in 2016, and that was not his area of expertise, so I was just kind of curious as to what he would be doing.
So,
Mr. Romero?
so these contracts say up to 20,000. So what's our structure, like, you check with Scott first, legal issues, or how are we gonna, like, next step, like Scott determines, well, it's not, let's ask them, or how are we using it? On issues, it's, I mean, I'm sure Scott can handle some of the smaller stuff.
He can, and we always try to include Scott and go to Scott first with, with any issues that we have that he can help us with. But if it's, I guess, out of his area or out of his expertise, or then, that's when we'll go out to.
One of the other things that I think is important for you guys to know is that in the past, well, since I've been here, we've tried to move to a preemptive positioning when we have employment issues, rather than just letting them go, just waiting until they get mad enough where they file something and we have to turn it over to the fund and then it becomes a really big issue. So we've tried to become far more preemptive. Part of that preemption is even before it gets to a litigation stage or a complaint stage, sometimes we try to get involved to come up with a solution to fix whatever the problem is. A lot of times in the course of coming up with that solution or trying to figure out what we're going to do to resolve it, I become involved with the city manager, with HR. So by the time if it gets to the point where they file a complaint and they start litigating, I kind of have a conflict of interest because I could be called as a witness in the case. So some of these I'm not able to kind of take the reins. And also, once we get into real specialized employment litigation, whether we're doing arbitration or something like that, some of that is niche experience, where Ms. Holcomb and then before her father had represented the city for decades, so they have the kind of the institutional knowledge of a lot of this stuff. So that's why we have them. But we try to handle it in-house if we can. If we can't, then we try to go to Ms. Holcomb for a pre-solution.
And I'm just asking this because, at the end of the day, we want to eliminate outside attorneys as much as we can. And my experience of having been involved with her father at West Las Vegas was this comes specifically to contract negotiations and stuff like that. And we experienced it, you didn't involve her as much, and look, we got 3 of the contracts passed, that had been pending a couple of years already. So I just make sure that we're not using them, straight off the bat. If there's something we could jump in and take care of.
Yeah, well, all of our union negotiations are being handled in-house. I think the only time we got her involved recently was when it went to impasse, and it looked like it was going to go into a litigious stage. But yeah, I think we're in agreement.
And then if we do go to that 20,000, and we're going to RFP it, or we're not anticipating?
We're not anticipating going over that amount. No, sir.
So
We try to utilize all our resources in-house before we utilize any outside.
So we had talked about, she had mentioned about being budgeted over 60,000. Now, do we lower that budget, or are we still going to budget the 60,000?
That's already in the finance budget. That doesn't mean that we have to get to that point. We just set a goal.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Montoya?
So, Mr. Maestas, this doesn't have a term limit. So I'm assuming that we can go away with it at any given time?
So I believe every contract that we get into is a year, annual, and then it can be renewed up to 4 years after that.
I'm not looking at the one from Mr. Van Vleck, but I'm looking at the one from Ms. Holcomb, and paragraph number 3 says that this will be effective through April 13th, 2023, unless terminated sooner.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Casey?
both of these contracts are listed as one item on the agenda. I'm wondering if we can separate a vote on, have a vote on each one separately rather than lumping them together.
What's your advice, Scott?
I think if a motion wants to be made to just have a vote on each one individually, just separate them. I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that. It was listed as one agenda item, but notice was given to the public, so there's no reason you have to necessarily lump them together and just have a motion to vote on each one individually.
Okay, that's a good idea.
I move that we vote on each contract individually.
Is there a second?
My apologies, I'm sorry.
That's okay, no worries, Darlene.
Can you amend your motion to include the timeframe on the other one that doesn't have the timeframe?
Can we just add it when we get to it? Which one doesn't have it, the Van Fleck one?
Which one was it? What's
Holcomb and Van Vleck, they both go through April of next year, April of 2020.
So that's great. Okay. All right. Second, Mr. Mayor.
There's a second to act on these separately. Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Which
Counselor
one are
Yula?
we voting on now?
This is just to.
Oh, to separate
To
them,
separate
okay.
them.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Yulabri Jr.?
Yes.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey and a second by Counselor Montoya. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion to, for the first contract, and that would be with the Holcomb Group.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the Holcomb Law Office professional service agreement as presented.
Thank you.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion by Ms. Casey, second by Mr. Uliwari. Roll call, please.
Montoya.
I'm sorry,
Montoya.
I thought it was him. Ms. Montoya. What's your name?
I have a motion by Counselor Casey, a second by Counselor Montoya.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, roll call. Sorry. Counselor Yulabri,
Yes.
Counselor Romero,
Yes.
Counselor Casey,
Yes.
Counselor Montoya.
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey and a second by Counselor Montoya. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. And I'll entertain a motion for the second one for Van Black. It's called
New Mexico local government law.
New Mexico Local Government Law. Can we get a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Romero?
make a motion to award the contract to New Mexico local government law.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero. I'll entertain a second.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Uliwari. Roll call, please.
Counselor Casey,
No.
Counselor Montoya,
No.
Counselor Romero,
Yes. Yes.
Counselor Yulabri Jr.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, we have a tie.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a motion carried.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Next item is business item number 4. It's request approval of resolution number 22-13, a resolution to certify fixed asset and inventory for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. We have Mr. Jesus Vaquero.
Mr. Vaquero, welcome again.
Mayor, Council, this resolution got presented last month. Comments from Councilor Montoya. We had 40-year-old vehicles still on the list. So his recommendation was to go through and we can clean up our list. We cleaned up all our assets that were dated pre-2000. So on our list, there should be no assets that are 1900s. We also sent the list to our directors, getting those lists back a little at a time for the directors to scratch out whatever assets are still on the list that do not exist anymore. So we're going to do a final cleanup, but that will be an FY22 asset list for approval in FY22. So we're asking for approval for FY21 asset list with resolution 2213.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Casey.
Before I was off the council, I had one last meeting, which was in April of 2020. And at that time, we had a discussion about the fixed assets and had talked about the possibility of having an auction, an online auction to sell some of the properties that we own that are no longer usable for the city but might be of benefit to someone else. Did we ever have that?
As far as the properties, no, ma'am.
Not just the property, but anything on the fixed asset list. Was anything sold online via auction?
Yes.
Yes, we've had two. We're gonna have another one coming up here by the end of the month for another online auction.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know because I never heard anything, if we had actually had one or not. But I do remember the discussion that we were supposed to have one, so I just wanted to make sure that it actually did happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve resolution 22-13.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero,
Second, Mr. Mayor.
second by Mr. Montoya. Roll call, please.
Counselor Yulabri Jr.,
Yes.
Counselor Casey,
Yes.
Counselor Montoya,
Yes.
Counselor Romero.
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero and a second by Counselor Montoya. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vaquera.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is request approval of Resolution 22-18, budget adjustment for the 2021-2022 fiscal year.
You're back again.
Coming back.
You're popular tonight.
Resolution 2218 is a bar adjustment for Form 213 for the library. It's an ARPA grant for $17,828. And also Form 217, which is our senior center, it is $5,562 for a refrigerator.
Very well. It's a pleasure of the council.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
approve resolution 22-18.
There's a motion by Mr. Ulibarri. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Ms. Casey. Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero,
Yes.
Counselor Montoya,
Yes.
Counselor Casey,
Yes.
Counselor Yulabri Jr.
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Yulabri and a second by Counselor Casey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vaquera.
Thank you.
Go home.
I'm not waiting to get it.
Thank you for the auditors. They were hopeful.
Next item on the agenda is request approval of Resolution 22-16 to accept a grant offer administered by Federal Aviation Administration in the amount of $436,177.
Mr. Lopez and Mr. Urule, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Mayor and Council, good evening.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your victories.
Thank you.
So we're here today to request approval of Resolution 22-16 to accept a grant offer administered by Federal Aviation Administration in the amount of $436,177. And this is for rehab of airfield signage and lighting with the City of Las Vegas Municipal Airport. The city will have a match of 5%, being $21,809. New Mexico DOT Aviation Division also shares a match of 5%, which is $21,809.
I have a question maybe for Mr. Vaquera and for Mr. Montoya, who sits on the Finance Committee. Were these two agenda items, did they go through Finance? Do any of your agreements go through Finance Committee?
No.
The agreements don't. The bars, this bar did not go through finance because of the timing. It'll get reviewed by our finance committee on Monday.
And I think for for future references, we shouldn't let that happen. I think the committee should review the bars as well as our commitment for the $21,000. Yeah. I think the finance committee should review those and make a recommendation to mayor and council at the time that's appropriate. I was just thinking.
The problem there, Mr. Mayor, is that we've encountered, we've already changed our meetings once to a different time and date to accommodate this agenda from the council. And so we're scheduled on a Monday before the second meeting, council meeting. And we weren't able to change it to the first Monday because I think the chambers was already occupied during that time, and I don't know what other factors. People, members couldn't attend at that time. So we landed up with trying to accommodate everybody and do it this first Monday of the second city council meeting. But time-wise, sometimes Mr. Vaqueras has stuff ready to go, and then we run it through the committee just so that for approval, or for acknowledgement, and so that they'll know about it, what's going on the week after.
Yeah, I would just recommend that work, the pre-work be done
Then,
further in advance.
okay, well then, Mr. Vaqueras, stuff like this is always gonna be delayed by a week then.
Okay.
And if you have a deadline to meet, you're gonna be late, and you're not gonna qualify for the funding. That's the way it is, I guess.
Well,
Because that's the only way we can apply for funding, if we do these things ahead of time sometimes, because he has a deadline to meet on some of this stuff.
I understand that.
So, we're trying to accommodate everybody, and, I mean, I can't obligate the members to show up on a certain day.
Yeah, my preference is, and it doesn't,
Yeah.
I'm just talking for myself, I think
Yeah.
finance should review these,
Yeah.
the bar and the commitment for our share, to see where that money's gonna come from, if it's available, where it's gonna come from, what line item, et cetera. And I think finance committee should be looking at those.
So, Mr. Vaqueras, as a directive, I would say that if you have a deadline to meet, you need to notify me, and we'll have an emergency meeting called to be able to approve it before this meeting on those items.
And this funding right now is just to apply for the grant offer, so this actually won't probably go into effect till after the new fiscal year.
Yeah.
So once that, we can just move forward to that.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve Resolution 22-16.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Montoya. I'll entertain a second.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Yellowbury Jr.?
Yes.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Montoya and a second by Counselor Yellowbury Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and direction on all boards, commissions, and committee meetings. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. So there's been several requests from the commissions and committees that they return to in-person meetings as opposed to Zoom. A lot of people aren't used to Zoom and don't have computer access in some cases, so they've been requesting that they meet in person. And the reason why we went to Zoom and to other resources was because of the pandemic, and we were trying to accommodate everybody's safety. So at this point, I'm open to discussion regarding what the preference is and give direction to the city clerk to communicate with those committees and those groups so that they can either meet in public or not. So are there any issues, any questions? Do you think we should? Pros and cons? Yes, Mr. Romero.
I agree that they should be in person. One thing that I would continue to, or hope that would continue is that they continue to record them, because as a counselor, it's good to go back and watch some of these meetings to see what's going on, and as we've all kind of come across now, you're like, wow, I can't believe some of this stuff was said. And so to me, I mean, it's good because you know what they're doing, and they're, sometimes they think that nobody's watching, but I think it's important that we do know what they're doing here because, I'll be honest, I'm not happy with some of the direction that some of these committees are acting, or, they're all advisory roles, but to me, in some of these meetings, it's like they're the council or they're their own entity, and that's not the way it works, they're just advisory. So to me, if we decide it in person, I would still want that we continue to record them, whether it's have the meeting and then they're uploaded the next day, but so as a counselor, I'm able to go back and watch those meetings.
Logistically, how, is that possible, Zach and Danielle?
Yeah, you could always go back and watch the video. All the meetings are uploaded to YouTube and
Okay.
What I think we have to do is coordinate with each of the chairs.
Sure.
To make sure that each meeting's recorded, and then we can always upload it the day after or whatever.
Could you, and I think you have to probably look at a meeting schedule, a calendar schedule, so that there's no conflicting use of the room or video equipment and so forth. So, Maria?
Mr. Mayor, if I may speak on behalf of the Utility Advisory Committee, I know they prefer to meet at the Utilities Department, and we can set up a computer to be able to record the meeting and still be able to provide it, so we don't necessarily have to come to this forum to do it, and then we've had a challenge with sometimes multiple meetings occurring at the same time,
Yeah.
and then one of them doesn't get recorded. But if we do require each one of the chairmen to ensure that the meeting is being recorded with a laptop or a computer system of some kind, then we can do it at our individual locations.
Thank you. Mr. Montoya?
You know, I guess that's the only thing I enjoyed about COVID, is that we're able to see all the meetings online. I could be hammering a hammer and put it on mute and listen to everything that's going on in a meeting that no mayor, no council is at. I think it was a plus all the way around for me. I like to be informed of things that are happening or that are going to be coming to mayor and council ahead of time. That's you know, just part of the educational process in government. I would support going back to regular meetings, because I think we all miss that, and I think it's important. And you know, a lot of other things happen during, you know, they shouldn't have happened during recording meetings and so forth. You know, but overall, you know, we went through it, and I think it was, you know, a new area, new breaking ground, and so forth. Looking back, and I think we did an exceptional job. I think we did good. We stuck together, and we still continued government. We didn't stop government, and those are things, good things. So I would recommend that we go back to live meetings and give direction to the city manager.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I would like to second that motion, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, because I agree with everything Mr. Montoya said.
But I would also like Councilman Romero's recommendations, that we still have them on YouTube and available for those that cannot attend meetings, handicapped, the elderly, and so forth, because there are some that do keep on top of that. Thank
So
you, Mr.
there's a
Mayor.
motion on the floor by Mr. Montoya, second by Ms. Casey. Roll call, please.
Counselor Yulabri Jr.,
Yes.
Counselor Romero,
Yes.
Counselor Montoya,
Yes.
Counselor Casey.
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Montoya and a second by Counselor Casey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Next item is request approval to proceed with the new professional services agreement between the City of Las Vegas and Arch Consulting. We have Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and council, on the approved contract with Arch Consulting, there was an error on the contract, so we gave notice to Arch Consulting. They did approve with canceling the existing contract and to move forward with the new contract, eliminating the errors.
Very well.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the professional service agreement between the City of Las Vegas and Arch Consulting.
There's a motion on the floor by Ms. Casey, second. Second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Counselor Montoya,
Yes.
Counselor Casey,
Yes.
Counselor Yulabri Jr.,
Yes.
Counselor Romero.
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Casey and a second by Counselor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment on
Sure.
this? Okay. Mr. Maestas, when do you plan to have Arch Consulting start doing work?
I already have a meeting scheduled for all afternoon tomorrow.
Oh, very good, because we've already missed out on deadlines for federal monies that are available, and I don't want us to miss out on any more. So the sooner the better. I'm glad to know that he's coming in tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business?
Next item is executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Romero?
I make a motion to enter executive session for personnel matters according to NMSA 10-15-1H2.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero, a second by Mr. Montoya to enter into executive session. Roll call, please.
Counselor Casey?
Yes.
Counselor Yulabri Jr.?
Yes.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero and a second by Counselor Montoya. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to request that the gallery be vacated, and the recordings be turned off.
NMSA 1978 10-15-1H2. I'd like to know for the record that only those matters specified in the motion for executive session were discussed and no action was taken.
Thank you. There's a motion, second by Mr. Montoya. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Mayor?
There's a motion on the floor to adjourn by Mr. Montoya. I'll entertain a second. Second by Mr. Ulibarri. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
Okay, esto, porque ahora te empezar el next meeting. Ya.
Maybe Mr. Lockett.
Everything.
Really, oh my God. And he was like, I don't know where we are. Good chiste. Ay, ay, ay.